It started with a ping. I was rinsing the coffee pot when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, lighting up with a fraud alert from the bank. At first, I assumed it was another scam. Those come often enough these days. But when I opened the message and followed the link, my breath caught. 68-3182, charged to your American Century business card, ending in 4992. My heart thudded once hard and low. I didn't use that card. Not since Harold died. It was tied to our old consulting business, Melrose and Bray. We'd shut most things down after his funeral, though technically the company was still active. The card hadn't been used in over a year. I tapped through to the statement, my hands already starting to tremble. The list of transactions felt like a slap. A $4,000 luxury car deposit. A $9,800 suite at the Azure Sands Resort in Turks and Caicos. First-class flights to the island, an exclusive spa package designer clothing. One after the other, the charges piled up, each one more outrageous than the last. I stopped counting at 40. Then came the text. Loved the ride and the getaway, Mom. You're the best. My stomach dropped. The message came from Zuri. I stood still for what felt like minutes, the phone heavy in my hand, the air suddenly thick around me. The kitchen, so quiet just moments ago now, felt stifling. The morning sun poured through the blinds and bounced off the linoleum like it had no business being cheerful. Zuri had taken the card. There was no other explanation. No one else had access. I hadn't even thought about that account in months, and I certainly hadn't told her anything about it. But last Sunday after dinner, she'd insisted on helping with the dishes, wrapping me in one of her unusually warm hugs. I remember now her fingers brushing my purse. I hadn't wanted to believe it then, and I didn't want to believe it now, but I did. Not because of the charges, not even because of the audacity of the theft, but because of that text, that smug, syrupy message, the kind that pretends to be affectionate while dragging a knife down your spine. I sat down slowly at the table, the same seat where Harold and I had shared our morning coffee for 38 years. My legs didn't quite hold all of me anymore. This wasn't about money. It was about something colder, crueler. I looked again at the statement, the total still glowing from the screen, and a quiet shiver passed through me. This wasn't an accident, and it certainly wasn't the first time. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the numbers danced behind my lids like a cruel joke. $68,000. For what a car she didn't earn. A trip she didn't need. A reward she didn't deserve. By morning, the numbness had sharpened into something else focus. I turned on my old laptop and logged into the Melrose and Bray accounts. It took me a few tries to remember the password. My fingers hesitated over the keys, a small act of resistance, as if part of me still wanted to believe this could be something else. Anything else. But it wasn't. There were charges going back almost 8 months. At first, they were small, $220 at a boutique wine shop, $560 at a spa downtown. I'd seen those transactions in passing, brushed them off as errors or promotional holds. Now I saw them for what they were, tests. She was gauging how much she could take before I noticed. By month 4, the amounts grew bolder. Designer stores, jewelry, flights, restaurant bills, all charged to the business card, my business card. I had been so careful to leave that account untouched since Harold passed, honoring the quiet dignity of what we'd built together. It had once paid salaries, covered consulting travel, closed multi-million-dollar deals. Now it was paying for massages and martinis. I called Jennifer Liu, the firm's accountant, for over 15 years. She picked up on the second ring. Agatha, it's been a while. I need to go over the company credit card statements, I said. The ones tied to the American Century business account. A pause. I assume you saw the recent activity I did, I said. My voice clipped. And I have a suspicion about who's behind it. We agreed to meet that afternoon. I wore my soft gray cardigan and pulled my hair back neatly, as if that small act might help me keep control. Jennifer laid the printouts across her desk. It was all there. Documented, traceable, undeniable. "Who has access to the card?" she asked gently. "Only one person aside from me," I said. "My son, Dorian. I gave him limited authority to help wrap things up after Harold died. But he wouldn't do this." Jennifer didn't respond right away. Then someone used it without his knowledge. I nodded, already certain. Zuri had found a way in. Whether she lifted it from my purse or coaxed the card details out of him, she had used it, brazenly, repeatedly, with full confidence that I'd never notice or that I wouldn't have the strength to stop her if I did. I thanked Jennifer, gathered the statements into a neat pile, and walked out into the afternoon sun. The breeze was warm, but it couldn't touch the chill forming deep in my chest. I didn't tell Dorian that night. Not yet. Not until I could make him see what I now saw so clearly. Not until I faced the truth I'd been denying for years. I once believed the distance between Dorian and me was just growing pains, an inevitable part of him, building a life with someone new. I told myself it was normal, healthy even to step back and let him stand on his own. But looking back now, I see it wasn't distance. It was erosion. Slow, steady, intentional. The signs had been there from the beginning. On their wedding day, no one saved me a seat at the family table. I ended up next to a pair of Harold's distant cousins I barely knew. When I mentioned it to Dorian later, gently he said Zuri was overwhelmed with planning, that the seating chart had changed at the last minute. I smiled and nodded, even as something cold settled under my skin. Later, I stopped appearing in their family photos. "Oh, it was just a quick, candid," Zuri would say, tucking her phone away. "We'll get one with you next time." But next time never came. The photos that did make it online painted a perfect picture of a couple, unburdened by family. No mother-in-law in sight, just two bright, curated lives. The first Christmas after their wedding, I spent weeks knitting Zuri a cashmere scarf in her favorite color. She unwrapped it, held it up briefly, and said, "How thoughtful. I'm sure someone will love this." The scarf disappeared. Months later, I found it shoved in the back of their coat closet, still tagged for donation. On Mother's Day, I cooked all of Dorian's childhood favorites: cinnamon rolls, roast chicken, lemon pie. Zuri spent most of brunch photographing the food for Instagram. "So authentic," she said, smiling over her phone. Nothing like old-school comfort food from the older generation. As if I were some museum relic. Dorian had laughed, nodding along, oblivious to the way her words stripped the dignity from everything I'd offered. That same day, she talked about buying a bigger house with better security. She looked around my living room when she said it, eyes skimming the wallpaper Harold and I had put up the year Dorian was born. "Of course we'd want to be close enough to help when Agatha needs us," she added sweetly. "It's not safe for older folks to live alone." I remember looking down at my hands then. My hands that had built a business, paid for Dorian's college, held Harold's in hospice, signed every paper alone after the funeral. But to her, I was already becoming a burden. She planted seeds one by one. "Did you mean to leave the stove on Agatha? You already told that story, remember? Maybe it's time to look into simplifying your finances." To Dorian, she sounded helpful. To me, it was a slow rewrite of who I was. I wanted so badly to stay in his life that I started believing her version of me. I stopped correcting her, stopped pushing back. I let her lead because I thought it meant keeping my son. But now I knew the truth. She wasn't trying to help. She was trying to erase me. And I had let her for far too long. I made pot roast. Dorian's favorite since he was 10 years old. I even set the table with the good china Harold side plates, the silverware we only used on holidays. Everything looked warm, familiar, safe. When they arrived, Zuri was glowing in a tailored burgundy dress, a diamond bracelet flashing on her wrist with every movement. She greeted me with a hug that hovered just above genuine. "You look lovely, Agatha," she said sweetly, "and something smells incredible." "Dinner's ready," I said. "Let's eat." We made small talk over the meal. I asked about their trip. Zuri launched into a story about champagne on the balcony, shopping in boutiques, and a tiny car rental they upgraded to a convertible. Dorian added little, just smiled and nodded in agreement. He looked tired. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. After the last bite of pie, I set my fork down and reached to the sideboard behind me. My fingers brushed the folder before I turned back to them. "There's something I need to talk to you both about," I said, folding my hands in front of me. "It won't take long." Zuri tilted her head, all concern. "Is everything okay?" I opened the folder and laid the credit card statements flat on the table. "These are charges made on a card I haven't used in over a year. A card tied to Melrose and Bray." Zuri's eyes flicked down and back up again. "Oh," she said lightly. "That must have been the card you gave me after dinner last week, remember?" I didn't respond. I simply met her gaze. "You said it was a gift," she continued, voice smooth. "That Harold would have wanted you to be generous for our anniversary. You told me to treat myself." Dorian turned to me. "Did you—" I thought it was a little strange, but Zuri said, "No." I said, my voice quiet, but firm. "I never gave her the card. I never even spoke to her about it." Zuri laughed. "You're just confused. It was right after we washed dishes you even—" "No," I repeated. "And what you both need to understand is that this isn't just personal." I reached for the second set of documents records from Jennifer, marked with company headers and dates. "This card is attached to a corporate account. Every purchase must be justified as a business expense." Zuri blinked the first crack in her composure. "Well, I didn't know that. I thought it was just your regular card. It's easy to mix things up." "Is it?" I asked. I pulled out my phone and placed it face up on the table. On the screen were photos I'd taken days ago, shots of documents I'd found in their home. A folder labeled "Planning" filled with notes in Zuri's handwriting. Bullet points listing my assets. A printed obituary highlighting Harold's business achievements. A note in neat script, "POA by Christmas. Full control in 18 months. Zuri stared at the phone. Her mouth opened, then closed. Dorian picked it up, scrolled silently, then looked at her. "You told me she was slipping, that she needed help." Zuri's lips parted again, but nothing came out. Her eyes darted between us. I sat back, folded my hands again, and waited. She had always been good at talking. I wanted to see what she would say now. The silence after the last photo was deafening. Dorian held the phone like it was a live wire. Zuri sat rigid, her face drained of all its practiced ease. "I was doing it for us," she said finally, her voice brittle. "You don't understand. We're drowning in debt. Your mother has more money than she could ever spend. And you thought theft was the solution I asked. I thought—" She paused, then shifted tactics. "I thought she wanted to help. She told me I raised a hand. No more lies." I stood and walked to the desk, returning with the manila folder I had prepared days earlier. I placed it on the table and opened it, slowly revealing a set of documents, a repayment agreement, a confession of unauthorized access, and a non-contact order. My hands were steady now, my voice even. "You have two choices, Zuri. You can sign these and make restitution, or I file a fraud report and let federal investigators handle the rest. Every transaction is traceable. Every charge is logged." Her expression wavered. "You can't be serious." "I am. This isn't about family anymore. It's about the law. You didn't just take from me, you used a corporate account and falsified business activity. That's fraud." Dorian sat motionless beside her, his eyes still locked on the screen. He wasn't defending her. He wasn't saying anything at all. Zuri reached for the documents with trembling fingers, then stopped. We don't have that kind of money. Then sell the car, I said. Return what you can. Pay back the rest in installments. There's a 5-year term built in with interest. This is insane. This is generous, I said. You should see what prison looks like for white-collar criminals. She stared at me, her mouth tight. What happens if I refuse? Then I report everything. The statements, the photos, the account access logs. You'll answer to the IRS and anyone else who decides to get involved. Her gaze flicked to Dorian. Are you just going to let her do this? He didn't look at her. I've been defending you for years. I won't do it anymore. Zuri stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. You'll regret this, she hissed. I already did, I said. She gathered her bag, glanced once more at Dorian, and walked out without another word. I didn't move. Not right away. I watched the doorway she left through, then turned to my son. He hadn't said a word since she stood. She manipulated me, he said finally. And I let her. She fooled me too, I said. But it's over now. He reached for my hand across the table. I didn't pull away. After a long pause, he whispered, What happens next? I looked down at the papers still resting between us, unsigned but waiting. The first box would arrive at my door 3 days later. The first box arrived exactly 3 days after Zuri walked out of my house. No note, no apology, just a sealed cardboard container delivered by courier. Inside were the diamond bracelet, 2 pairs of heels I recognized from her vacation photos, and a stack of designer clothing tags still attached. Over the following weeks, more boxes trickled in. Each one a small act of restitution, or perhaps just fear dressed in tissue paper. The documents came next. Signed, notarized, and mailed with the kind of efficiency Zuri had once reserved for RSVPs and holiday plans. The repayment agreement, the statement of confession, the non-contact clause. Each one exactly as I had written them. It was done. She never called. I never asked her to. I sold the house a month later. Too many rooms. Too many shadows. Harold's laughter still clung to the walls, but so did the silence that followed. The day we cleared out the last of the furniture, Dorian helped me fold the American flag from his father's military funeral and place it gently into the last box. We didn't speak much that day. We didn't need to. The condo I chose overlooked the harbor. A 10th floor corner unit with floor-to-ceiling windows and early morning light that flooded the kitchen by 7 a.m. It wasn't grand, but it was mine. No memories pressed into the wallpaper, no ghosts in the floorboards. Just clean space and a quiet start. I joined a book club that met every other Thursday, a walking group on Tuesdays. I even signed up for a photography class and found myself learning how to shoot reflections and light the way Harold used to teach me about contracts and leverage. Dorian stayed in my guest room for a while after the divorce. He worked late hours and we often passed like ships at night, me returning from the waterfront, just as he poured cereal before bed. Eventually, he found his own apartment a few blocks away. I helped him hang his first picture frame. He helped me mount a coat hook by the door. That was the trade now. Small things shared evenly. We didn't talk about Zuri much. There was nothing left to say. She had returned the goods signed. The papers disappeared. From what I heard through acquaintances, she'd moved to the West Coast. Rumors followed, of course, a new relationship, an older man with real estate holdings. The pattern repeating, but it didn't touch me anymore. One morning, standing in my new kitchen with a cup of coffee warming my hands, I realized I hadn't thought about her in days. The weight she once placed on my chest had lifted, and I could breathe fully again. Not as someone's mother-in-law, not as someone's burden, just as Agatha. That was the morning I decided to do something I hadn't done in over 30 years. I opened a blank journal, wrote the words, "Start over," and meant them. 6 months passed without drama, without apologies, without noise. Each morning I stood by my window and watched the sun rise over the harbor. Coffee in hand, the light shifting from silver to gold across the water. It became my quiet ritual, a slow reminder that peace doesn't arrive all at once. It unfolds one breath at a time. Dorian came by every Sunday sometimes with groceries, sometimes with nothing but time. He looked different now, lighter. The tension around his mouth had softened, and the way he moved through a room no longer suggested apology. We didn't talk much about the past. We talked about books and cooking and what he wanted next. That was enough. Sometimes I caught myself smiling for no reason at all. It startled me how lightness could return after years of carrying invisible weight. It wasn't about the money. I'd never cared much for numbers once Harold was gone. What Zuri had taken wasn't in the statements. She'd stolen peace, confidence, the quiet safety of being seen clearly, and yet she hadn't kept it. Because she'd underestimated what I'd rebuilt from scratch long before she ever entered our lives. She thought I'd be easy to write out, that my kindness was weakness, that age made me small. But she never understood what I'd given Dorian and Harold before him was not something that could be extracted or erased. It had roots. I still tended those roots every day. One afternoon, I received a message from Eleanor, a woman from the book club. She'd lent me a novel the week before, and I had returned it with a handwritten note tucked inside. Her message read, "You seem like someone who's been through fire," and came out glowing. I sat with that for a while. Not because I needed the affirmation, but because it named something I hadn't. Yes, that was it. I had not burned. I had not vanished. I had not let the fire take me whole. I had simply walked through it and kept walking. That evening, as the harbor lights flickered on and sailboats rocked gently in their slips, I opened the journal on my desk and turned to a fresh page. My pen hovered for a moment before I wrote a single line across the top. "This life is mine."